Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by your Delaware Valley Acura dealers with new inventory arriving daily. Find your new award-winning Acura at your local Delaware Valley Acura dealer and reserve yours today. We got a lot to go over. Geoff Mosher's here, and I'm sure he's got the notepad out. He's ready to go. He's got answers. We got questions. He said the buzz was growing that Reagor would be traded. It did not happen. There's the notepad. It did not happen yesterday, but Howie Roseman pulling it off today. Reagor is now paired up with Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. They get back a 7th and a 4th conditional 5th pick, depending on his playing time. So you had mentioned, you had reported that there was interest in him. How did Roseman get this deal done?
Well, I nothing changed from what I was hearing yesterday and what I tweeted, in that teams I spoke to were expecting, they knew there was traction. Obviously every personnel director has talked to every personnel director, every GM has talked to every GM in these last days and weeks leading up to the cut-down deadline. So teams had a good sense that there was going to be something going on there with the Eagles. And what I believe had to happen was just some roster maneuvering for both teams first at the cut-down deadline to make sure that they had things settled before the trade could then go ahead and be executed. And that's what happened. Minnesota lost, Mike, a wide receiver a couple of weeks ago. Their number 4 wide receiver, B.C. Johnson, to an ACL injury. And their other 4th receiver, I think they just waived him today after the Reagor trade. It wasn't somebody who had a tremendous amount of experience. I wouldn't be shocked if, from a Vikings standpoint, with Adam Thielen getting up there, maybe they moved him to the slot and put Reagor outside opposite Jefferson, or even KJ Osborne will get on the field as well. He's their number 3 receiver right now. We'll see what they do with Jalen Reagor when he gets there. He'll probably be the punt returner. But it gives the Vikings some more experience and maybe the chance to give Jalen Reagor more than whatever the Eagles could give him, or make it work with Reagor more than the Eagles were. Because as we've talked about, Mike, the Eagles have moved on. And they didn't say that verbally, but when you draft Devontae Smith, trade for A.J. Brown, sign Zach Pascal, put Quez Watkins on the field and talk about him and his development, that's 4 guys. You just didn't have room right now for Jalen Reagor other than punt returner. And you're really not going to keep a first-round pick who can give you value in return on the bench just to return punts.
So who takes his spot on the roster? By the way, they did release Davion Taylor as well, which 3rd-round pick, a little bit of a surprise. That was to make room for Ann Book. So you can kind of go over those 2 moves. Taylor out, Book in, and then Reagor's spot. What happens there?
Good question. I know Britton Covey was brought onto the practice squad. He was a guy who was returning punts for them, and they had their eyes on him for that when they signed him as a rookie free agent out of Utah. There is a spot open, so I don't know if there'll be if Howie Roseman knew he was going to make this trade. I don't know that he would have signed Covey to the practice squad immediately. But perhaps Covey gets elevated, or with this open spot that you mentioned with the release of Davion Taylor, perhaps they are looking for someone with more experience in the return game. And we'll see how that spot gets filled. A lot of guys have been waived over the last day. More guys will be waived today. And we'll see going forward if someone who occupies that last spot has kick and punt return experience.
We've gone out of our way to stress the initial 53 because
Yes.
very fluid. We mentioned Reagor, he's out. They get draft picks in return. You mentioned Covey as a possible return man there. But why Davion Taylor? Why did they finally give up on him? It seemed like he was gaining momentum last year, and then the injury. Did the injuries catch up? Is there just too much talent? Why do you think Davion Taylor is waived?
A number of reasons. First of all, as you just mentioned, the acquisitions, right? Kazir White comes in the offseason. Nakobe Dean gets drafted. TJ Edwards had the extension last year. So now this kid gets pushed to 4th inside linebacker, because he's not a strong side linebacker who's going to rush the passer. So now you're talking about diminished playing time, backup role. And when they kept Sean Bradley, who is a very good special teams player, then it became obvious to me that this would be the guy who's probably on only the initial 53, because once they made some moves, he was going to go, because you're keeping him on the sort of like the Reagor thing. You're not going to keep him there just for special teams, especially when you have a better special teams linebacker. So the problem with him is he couldn't stay healthy. I mean, the problem with him goes back to being drafted in the third round, which is not his fault. He didn't draft himself. You and I have talked about this pick numerous times. This was a guy who, when we did post-draft wrap-up stuff and intel, Adam and I, we couldn't find too many teams that had Davion Taylor rated as a third-round pick. In fact, most of the teams we had said day 3 guy. Some even told us priority free agent, which means like your first batch of rookie free agents that you really want. So there were people all across the board on him, and not too many people. Only the Eagles seem to have him as a third-round pick. So overdrafted to begin with, doesn't have a ton of football experience. You know, he had that his religion prevented him from playing a lot of high school football until way late. Went to Colorado, has this great athleticism and speed, but sort of played off the ball. Was not a stack linebacker. So now you're talking about trying to teach him that. Felt like he was getting it last year in OTAs, right? But then he got hurt twice. Then he finally got some playing time last year and showed he could stop the run, was a liability in coverage, but then he got hurt again. So there were just a whole lot of factors involved there. But I guess the biggest one you would say is that they upgraded at his position.
Yeah, I would agree with the upgrade spot, and it's a shame because he was showing some flashes. He had some speed and athleticism, something that the linebackers on this team did not have last year, and then he ends up getting hurt, and then I guess you bring in Dean. I guess the drafting of Dean, which they probably didn't expect in the third round, kind of pushes him out the door, right?
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, it certainly created yet another obstacle for him, because he wouldn't have probably started over Kazir. The way he played this camp, he wasn't going to start over either TJ Edwards or Kaiser White, but he could have been the first backup, right? But now that's Nakobe Dean. And when you talk about draft, by the way, that 2020 draft of Jalen Reagor 1, Jalen Hurts 2, 2021, yeah, that is the 2020 draft, right? Reagor 1, Jalen Hurts 2, Davion Taylor 3, and then Kevon Wallace is hanging on by a string here. I mean, if the Eagles make any other moves, he's another guy that you got to think would be bounced out from the initial 53, and he was one of the 2 fourth-round picks along with Jack Driscoll. So Jalen Hurts is single-handedly sort of saving that draft right now. And Quez Watkins was, I believe, a 6th-round pick. But otherwise, that draft is a disaster.
Let's see. Anthony Harris, let's get into that, because I think this is a good move for them to be able to get him to agree to come back to the practice squad. It gives them a veteran safety, because he doesn't play special teams, so I don't want you on the 53. But if somebody gets hurt, he slides probably right from the practice squad. He's like your Jordan Howard. You go right from practice squad to the lead ball carrier.
Yeah, that would be the situation if somebody gets hurt. He probably would get the elevation there, depending on what they're doing defensively at the time, how Josiah Scott is coming along. He's injured right now, so he's not getting a full education on his return on his kind of hybrid role that they were starting him off in. Or not starting him, but that they moved him into kind of middle of the camp when they started putting him at safety. But Jonathan Gannon can't do everything he wants to do with a guy like Anthony Harris, as opposed to what he's got in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So if Anthony Harris does have to be elevated and playing on the defense, it's going to impact the defense not in a great way.
Yeah, you get Harris, though, with a veteran, so that's kind of, hey, stabilizes. Can almost act as another coach, because he could be out in the field, right, during practice during the week. Sure. So he can kind of work with these
he's practicing.
Guys. Exactly, right.
Yeah.
He can be out there and work with both of these guys. And because let me ask you about Tart and some of the things. Was terminology a problem for a guy like him? Was that something that was holding him back?
I don't know if it's terminology per se, more so than just new defense. Trying to learn something new is not easy, especially when you're doing complex things on defense. And then when he had left the team for some personal reasons in camp, and it wasn't just for like a day or two. It was a little lengthier than that. So that put him behind as well. So it just seemed like the fit wasn't there. You started to get that vibe during camp. He's slow to learn. He's running with the threes. I don't know how he felt about that. I mean, that's kind of commonplace when you sign a guy off the street in June.
You make anything of his social media? Seemingly was like, if you only knew, right? Did you get that? Did you get that sense that he wasn't all that on board with getting cut?
Yeah, well, I mean, I make of that is that he, probably felt he should have gotten more opportunities, maybe with a first or second team, and didn't.
I will say, Will Parks was similar. People thought, hey, why isn't this Will Parks getting a shot? And Parks has been in Denver. Now he got cut by the Jets. I mean, he doesn't seem to be sticking around anywhere either. So,
yeah, I think you and I have talked on the show a little bit about the curse of the 1-year deal at safety and linebacker for the Eagles for the past few years. There have been a lot of those, and whether it's Will Parks or Corey Nelson or, the guy from the Chargers they signed and then retired. And then last year it was Eric Wilson. And, it's been the safety has sort of become the new linebacker for the Eagles until they got Chauncey.
Why Ann Book? Give us a little thought on Ann Book. Reed Sinette's on the practice squad, but Book is on the roster.
Is it me, or is that like a South Jersey, like shore accent you got with Ian Book? Like, it sounds like you're saying Ann Book whenever you say that name.
There was a guy who used to call the station a lot, and I would say Ann. He said, no, it's Ian.
Yeah, you kind of, it sounds like you're turning him into like Anne Frank.
No, Ian. Ian.
Okay, yeah, Ian Book. I'm a little, I'm perplexed by the idea of carrying 4 quarterbacks. 3 on the active, 1 on the practice squad. Because if you think of a practice, an actual NFL practice, you have your starting quarterback, in this case Jalen Hurts, will take like 80 to 90% of the first team reps in preparation for a game, right? Gardner Minshew is going to get that 10% of backup reps that backup quarterbacks get. And then your third quarterback usually runs the scout team. So if Ian Book is running the scout team, what is Reed Sinette doing? Does he just stand there? Does he take some other?
Maybe he's practicing. Maybe he's the backup holder. I don't know.
That's an expensive salary for a guy to be a backup holder.
He is practicing.
It sort of perplexes me.
He's on the practice squad as the holder. I don't know. It's a good point.
Yeah.
What if 4 quarterbacks do at practice? Hey, Dallas only has 1 guy on the roster. I haven't seen them add another quarterback yet, but they only have 1.
I know. It's an odd world right now as the rosters get tinkered with and maneuvered. In fact, the Houston Texans, I think if you look at their final 53, they only kept like 4 wide receivers.
Good, man. This has been.
I'm like, who does that?
And the Eagles have 3 wideouts on their practice squad, so they got all 3 of those guys through, right? They got Covey, they got Devin Allen, and they got Dean Cain.
Yeah. So that just sort of goes to show, and we say it every year, but people panic nonetheless. Oh, my God, there's so much speed with Devin Allen. You can't release him. He's going to get claimed. Or you can't waive Deon Cain with the type of camp that he had and keep Jalen Reagor. These guys always
Why is that,
almost
though? Why are these guys like, they're like, people want them to play. They show so much talent. Why are no other teams interested in some of these guys?
Because and this is nobody's fault, right? You're only like most Eagles fans are only paying attention to what the Eagles are doing. Most Ravens fans only paying attention to what the Ravens are doing, and the Raiders and Seahawks. But everybody's got really good wide receivers in camp who are making plays. I mean, we can go through Eagles teams of the past, from Hank Baskett to Greg Salas to Henry Josie at running back, right? Like
Paul Turner, don't forget him.
Paul Turner, Rasheed Bailey, every team has skill position players who perform well in camp. So they don't worry about claiming somebody else's. They're just trying to get their own back. Mm-hmm. Like Devin Allen hasn't played football in 5 years, more than that. He catches 1 deep ball because he's fast and they're playing the right style of defense, and everybody's like, "Oh, you can't get rid of that kind of speed." Folks, everybody's got him in camp. I hate to tell you, but it's true.
Right, everybody's got a guy running 4.3 straight line down the middle. Can he do anything else? Yeah. Well, Allen hasn't played in 5 years. He just happens to be world-class speed. Some of these guys have more football speed or straight line speed. He is fast off the jump, that guy.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember. It wasn't that long ago. I think it was only 2 preseasons ago. Mark and Michelle caught a 75-yard touchdown pass on a deep post from Nate Sudfeld, I believe it was. Okay, so
Mark
a fast
and Michelle
guy got behind a bad defense and caught a touchdown pass. It happens.
Yeah, that's a good name, Mark and Michelle. LaRaven Clark's on the practice squad too. Noah Togiai, so they snuck him on there because he was the guy last year that got picked up, right?
Yes, he was. Well, 2 years ago, he got picked up by the Colts. And then, yeah, and that was the weirdest thing ever because remember, there was no tape on that. I think they didn't play preseason games that year, right? Or if they did, there was nobody in the stands. So
I don't think they played preseason games the one year. You're right.
Yeah. So it's still kind of mind-boggling that the Colts would claim a player that they had no professional tape on, but they did, and used him for a year and a half. And then they released him last year, and the Eagles brought him back. But I think that their thought was, we have Richard Rodgers if need be. They wanted to keep Grant Calcaterra. The guy got hurt. They drafted him. He obviously clearly has some speed and explosion at that position. He needs to get bigger and stronger. He can't block. But he's got something there, and they didn't want to risk losing him, so they could keep him. Figure they bring back Tungiai. If Tungiai gets claimed, there's always Richard Rodgers. And by the way, Tyree Jackson will probably at some point be back. And man, he looked enormous, Mike. When I saw him in Miami, upper body. While he's been out on ACL rehab, he got much bigger. I mean, he looked like a brute. So it'll be interesting to see him come back sometime in the middle of the season.
Yeah, I look at this roster, and I want to get your thoughts on the trade yesterday because I didn't talk to you. But now that the dust has settled, give me your thoughts on the trade, how this kind of changes the defense, if at all, and, the move to get him. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, huge trade, mainly because he fits what they want to do so much on the back end. I mean, they can play press man now and feel a little bit more comfortable. They can play a variety of back-end defenses, whether it's cover 2 quarters, one robber. When I say one robber, that usually means 2 safeties deep, but right as the ball is snapped, one safety runs into kind of the middle of the field where they think that the number one target on a route is going to be. Like if it's you're playing the Chiefs, you'll come up and bracket Tyreek Hill, or not, that's what it used to be. Now maybe Travis Kelce with that safety and the extra defender. So like a bracket type of coverage there. So it gives them a lot more versatility. They couldn't do those kind of things with Anthony Harris. Anthony Harris just can't turn his hips and run the way Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does. Now, the downside is Chauncey's an instigator. He's a trash talker. So he's got some, he might be a Derek Barnett bad penalty waiting to happen. There's probably going to be some times where people get frustrated with him, but he is a good player. He is a player the Eagles liked a couple of years ago coming out of the draft. Coming out of Florida. You know Howie Roseman loves his Florida guys.
Yeah.
But I don't think they had a pick in the round that he was drafted in that year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was, and I talked about this morning. He was a high third-round pick. The Eagles did not have a pick in the third round. He might have been a high fourth-round pick. He was like the third pick of the fourth round. The Eagles did not have.
I thought he was the third rounder, but you might be right.
He was like the third pick of the fourth round, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. The Eagles did not have a third-round pick, so they couldn't have taken him in the third. And their fourth-round pick was like second from the bottom. They took Sharif Miller. So they really couldn't have taken Chauncey Gardner. There was nowhere to take him. So to say, if you really liked him, you could have drafted him yourself, not really.
Correct. I mean, that's a little different. I mean, plus, we're talking about a guy who's second or third round. It's not like you could say you definitely trade up in the first round to get, Jordan Davis. It's just a guy that they liked but did not have the ability to get.
Yeah. So running back, too. Did they sign LaMichael Pirine? Did I see that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because they have Kennedy Brooks and Jason Huntley on the practice squad. So they're bringing in a third running back. They've already got 3. I know Miles Sanders has been out for a while with the hamstring. It's my understanding I don't think he's going to be out for 4 or 5 more weeks or anything like that. So I'm a little surprised. But, they did need a bigger back like the Jordan Howard last year. Pirine is a bigger back. Kennedy Brooks is a big back, but I don't think that they see him yet as an NFL player. So I think that's probably why they brought Pirine in.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what ends up happening. We've got about a week before the opener, and the Eagles have 3 extra days, so they've got some time to continue to tweak. That's why we, again, say it was the initial 53. That has already changed. I would imagine keep your eyes open, Jeff. Keep your notebook out.
I always do.
Did I miss anything? Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything there.
Yeah.
And the good thing is we'll have more time to cover more things going forward.
Very good. All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 right here on the Sports Bash. Have a good Labor Day weekend. I hope to see you possibly.
That would be great. I'm hoping to help see you as well.
All right, man. Take care.
See you.
All right, that's Geoff Mosher. InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, you can hear that Mondays and Thursdays. They probably have a new schedule for the start of the season here. We'll get that up to date for you. The Checo's here tomorrow, Adam on Friday.